History has been rewritten. Paris Saint-Germain didn't just win their first ever Champions League title, they absolutely destroyed, took to the cleaners, finished, restarted, and finished again Inter Milan in the most lopsided final in Champions League history. How did they do it? Let's break it down. First things first, the match breakdown of PSG versus Inter is 5-0 in the Champions League final. That alone, it's absolutely ridiculous. The venue, the occasion, the final took place in the Allianz Arena, Munich, a fitting stage for PSG. Honestly, for PSG's crowning moments, that was a fitting stage. PSG secured their first ever Champions League title, completing a historic treble: the Ligue 1, the Coupe de France, and the Champions League. It is perfect. Of course, we know that Luis Enrique did his first treble with Barcelona, and then the tragedy struck. But we are going to get to this tragedy and how emotional that absolutely made this game feel. But they have absolutely done the treble again in Paris Saint-Germain, which is quite impressive in my opinion. And then let's start with the first half. PSG's early domination. 12 minutes into the game absolutely breaks open from Achraf Hakimi's goal against his former club, giving PSG a 1-0 lead. This was not just about the former goal, Achraf Hakimi's goal. It was about the way Désiré Doué passed the ball in the 6-yard box, understanding that Hakimi was in a better position. That just shows how impressive, how well drilled this team is, how selfless this team have absolutely become. And that is the reason why they won this Champions League. It is so befitting that this is what happened when they win the Champions League. And then the second goal comes from Désiré Doué, where the counter-attack goes from Kvaratskhelia to Dembele. Dembele crosses the ball to Désiré Doué, and bang, it is a goal, because Désiré Doué doubles the advantage with a deflected shot, making it 2-0. And then you go into that same first half. PSG dominated, 59% possession, suffocating Inter's midfield. They were just being outclassed. It looks like Inter were playing players with old men on the pitch. They needed a lot of legs, and they just did not have those legs on the bench, nor did Inzaghi actually change it in a way that gave Inter the ability to actually step and plant a foot in the final. It was truly a dominant, it was a one-sided final today. And then you look at in the second half, PSG just became ruthless. I think Enrique went there and was like, hey, this is the most dangerous result in the final. 2-0. You need to put in a lot more goals. You need to finish, and that is what they did, because Désiré Doué comes in the 63rd minute and strikes again. The 19-year-old has now become the youngest player to ever score twice in the Champions League final. I'm going to say it again. He is 3 days from turning 20. He is 19 years of age. Now I'm going to ask you a question. What were you doing when you were 19? Because it doesn't seem like you were scoring in the Champions League final, because this boy is that special. And because of that, make sure you guys do us a favor, because about 75% of you guys, just like the possession in this game, have not subscribed. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, comment down below what you think about this situation, and like this video. And then we go 73rd minute. In the 73rd minute, Kvaratskhelia comes in and adds a fourth with absolutely piercing pass from Dembele to Kvaratskhelia, and Kvaratskhelia, understanding and being ambidextrous where he can use his right or his left, did not tell Sommer what he was going to do. Uses his left in the left hand side, which would have been a lot harder, puts it in the near post and seals the fate for Inter. It was absolutely donzo at that point. It was good night, sayonara, I think that's the word, for Inter after that fourth goal. But guess what? It wasn't the end of it. Kenny Malu, I hope that's the way to pronounce it, Miulu scores the fifth, making PSG's victory the biggest ever margin in a Champions League final. It is ludicrous, it is mind-blowing, and it is history that has just been written. And then when we look at this situation, of course we need to look at the key stats of why this situation was played out this way, and also the records that PSG have set. PSG's 5-0 win is the largest victory in Champions League final history. Amazing work. Luis Enrique becomes the 7th manager to win the Champions League with 2 different clubs. If you know the remaining 6, I want you guys to comment down below, because that looks like a good trivia question for every single football fan that watches this channel. So comment down below, and then we'll absolutely recognize it in the next video if you get the answers right. And then the last one in this situation is PSG's young talent, led by Doué, Mayolu and Kvaratskhelia. They have absolutely proved that post-Mbappe era has just begun. Now let me say this. Kylian Mbappe left PSG to Real Madrid. Not only leaving PSG to Real Madrid, he left PSG to Real Madrid, and Real Madrid did not even get to the semis. And we understand the way of building a team now. Do we understand the best way of building a team is by actually getting a team and not a bunch of individuals? That was the difference. Today we heard what Vitinha said, that when Messi left, or when Messi was leaving, he says this team will never win a Champions League. And guess what? Very few years later, this team goes in and wins a Champions League. Why? Because they created a team. Because Luis Campos and Luis Enrique did not let this team become selfish. They did not let Dembele come into the team and become the superstar. They let him understand, and they let the rest of the team, in terms of their building, understand that this is a group effort, and that group effort has just won the league, or won the Champions League. And we also have to add Marquinhos, the ever-present in PSG, has just done the remarkable. He has 11 Ligue 1 trophies. Not just 11 Ligue 1 trophies, he has continued in the strive for excellence that he has been the first captain in PSG history. Bear in mind they had Pochettino, bear in mind they had Ronaldinho, bear in mind they had JJ Okocha, and Marquinhos is the first captain to absolutely lift the Champions League for Paris Saint-Germain. The trophy that has eluded them for so long has absolutely come home and is going to Paris, the place of beauty. The most beautiful trophy is going to Paris, and that is the exciting thing about it. And of course, when you're looking at the stories that this thing absolutely brings, first things first, you can't go wrong without, you can't talk about storylines without talking about PSG's first Champions League title came after Mbappe left. That is one thing you have to talk about. For years and years on years, PSG built their team around Kylian Mbappe, but they never won the Champions League with him. The moment he left for Real Madrid, PSG finally conquered Europe without a single global superstar. And yes, you can say Dembele is a global superstar. However, Dembele has never scored the 30-goal season that he had this year. So he became a global superstar, in my opinion, the moment he left Barcelona and joined PSG. You understand? He was always on the bench, he was always injured, and he was always not delivering in Barcelona. And guess what? He comes home, he comes to Paris and does a madness. This proves that team chemistry can be more powerful than individual brilliance. I've always said this. Team chemistry can be more powerful than individual brilliance. We saw an example of that with Manchester United in the season that we just experienced. Individual brilliance of Bruno Fernandes. However, when we get that team chemistry is when we absolutely get back to becoming champions of England. Now, the second story that is absolutely mind-blowing is the most one-sided Champions League final in history. This is something that Inter Milan fans will absolutely want to forget, but we as football lovers and football enthusiasts will never forget, because no team have ever won a Champions League final by more than 4 goals. I repeat, by more than 4 goals until PSG today. A domination, a demolition of Inter. They absolutely held that snake by the neck and literally did not let it go until the 95th minute. It is absolutely amazing. This wasn't just a victory, it was a humiliation. Inter barely had a shot on target, and the PSG youngsters absolutely ran riot. The third story is Achraf Hakimi's classy gesture against his former club. Achraf Hakimi scored the goal in the 12th minute but refused to celebrate out of respect for Inter, where he played before joining PSG. Bear in mind, he won a trophy, the Scudetto I believe, with Inter that year before he joined PSG. It was just a perfect show and a rare show of sportsmanship in a ruthless final. Bear in mind, this was a Champions League final. Nobody would have blamed him if he was overtaken by his emotions, but he wasn't. He absolutely stayed course and understood that without Inter, he wouldn't have been at PSG to win this Champions League. And that is truly a sportsman moment. Now, the fourth story, Désiré Doué. Record-breaking performance. The 19-year-old became the youngest player ever to score twice in a Champions League final. He became the first player in history, he became the first player in history to contribute to 3 goals in a final. PSG signed him, by the way, last summer. They signed him last summer to replace Mbappe. And guess what? He absolutely delivered. Désiré Doué replaced Mbappe, and he absolutely did one thing. In fact, let me make this clear. Désiré Doué did the one thing that Kylian Mbappe could not do. Désiré Doué did the one thing that Kylian Mbappe could not do. I want that to sink in. That's how bad and that's how crazy Désiré Doué is of a superstar, and he is 19 years of age. He is just starting his footballing career. I can't wait to see what he does next. And fifth, but definitely the most important in my books, Luis Enrique's emotional tribute to his late daughter. PSG manager Luis Enrique lost his daughter Zeina, I hope that's how I pronounce it, or that's how it's pronounced, in 2019. After winning the final, PSG's fans, it's a tough one. PSG's fans rolled down a banner in her memory, and Enrique wore a special tribute shirt for that particular purpose. A deeply emotional moment that added heart to PSG's historical night. Now, I'm going to give you guys a glimpse of what this means, because Zeina was battling cancer, but when Luis Enrique won the Champions League final, I'm getting chills even talking about it. When he won the Champions League final, Zeina came to the pitch and planted a Barcelona flag. And that's why the Tifo today showed Luis Enrique planting a PSG flag with his daughter in a PSG shirt. She was not there physically, but she was there spiritually. And that is what makes this absolutely great. It's what makes this game the beautiful game. It's what makes this game the most popular sport in the entire world. And finally, but not the least, Inter Milan's nightmare. 2 finals, 2 humiliations. Inter lost the 2023 final to Manchester City 1-0. 2 years later, they returned to this same spot, only to suffer their worst defeat in the Champions League final history. Their title drought continues. This is a loss that will haunt them for years. The final wasn't just a match. It was a history of redemption, heartbreak, and history. A perfect dramatic YouTube. Well, let me know what you guys think about this situation, because PSG have absolutely demolished Inter 5-0 in the Champions League final. I repeat, 5-0 in the Champions League final. Let me know in the comments. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.